It started as a normal Tuesday morning. People across Earth were going about their daily routines, drinking coffee, heading to work, or just waking up, when every screen on the planet suddenly went dark. Phones, computers, televisions, billboards, everything with a display flickered for a moment before showing the same image. A group of tall, silvery beings standing in what looked like a grand chamber. The aliens, as everyone immediately recognized them to be, had smooth, metallic-looking skin that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Their large, dark eyes scanned the camera with what could only be described as disdain. The one in the center, wearing what appeared to be an ornate robe made of flowing liquid metal, stepped forward. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, its voice somehow being broadcast in every language simultaneously across the globe. "We are the Galactic Council, the governing body of civilized species across this sector of the galaxy. We have been observing your kind for the past 100 years." People in streets across the world stopped to watch. Cars pulled over. Work came to a standstill. Every human heart beat a little faster at this historic moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life. The alien's next words shattered all expectations. "We find you lacking," it declared, its tone dripping with contempt. "Your species is primitive, violent, and hopelessly divided. You wage wars over imaginary lines on your planet's surface. You destroy your own ecosystem for temporary comfort. Your technological advancement is laughably slow. You've barely managed to reach your own moon, and even that achievement is now decades old." In Times Square, New York, the crowd that had gathered to watch the giant screens stood in stunned silence. In Beijing, late-night workers stopped mid-stride, their faces illuminated by the harsh criticism being broadcast on every available surface. In a small research facility in Colorado, Dr. James Cooper sat back in his chair, his coffee forgotten as he watched with intense focus. The alien continued its brutal assessment. "Your mathematics is elementary. Your understanding of quantum mechanics is flawed. Your attempts at space travel are crude at best. You split your atoms for weapons before you thought to use them for peace. You create artificial intelligence without considering the consequences. You are, in short, a danger to yourselves and potentially to others." The being paused, its metallic skin rippling with what might have been disgust. "Therefore, by unanimous decision of the Galactic Council, Earth is hereby placed under quarantine. No spacefaring species will be permitted to make contact with your world. No trade will be established. No technology will be shared. You will remain isolated until you either destroy yourselves or somehow manage to evolve beyond your current primitive state." The announcement sent shockwaves through humanity. In London, a businessman threw his coffee cup at the nearest screen. In Moscow, an old woman crossed herself and began to pray. In Rio de Janeiro, a crowd that had gathered to watch the broadcast on a beach began to shout and argue among themselves. But in that quiet research facility in Colorado, Dr. Cooper leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he noticed something peculiar in the aliens' transmission. There was something about the way they described quantum mechanics, something that didn't quite add up. The alien leader raised what might have been a hand, its fingers long and flowing like mercury. "This is not a negotiation. This is not an invitation for dialogue. This is simply an information broadcast to inform you of your status. Do not attempt to respond. Do not attempt to leave your atmosphere. Accept your place, humans." The broadcast ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving screens worldwide showing static before returning to their normal displays. In its wake, it left a humanity reeling from shock, anger, and fear. But in his lab, Dr. Cooper was already pulling out his notebook, scribbling equations and diagrams. He had seen something in that broadcast, something the aliens had inadvertently revealed about their own understanding of physics, something that might just change everything. The world outside his window erupted into chaos as governments scrambled to respond, people panicked, and humanity faced its first real existential crisis as a species. But Dr. Cooper barely noticed. He was too busy thinking about what he had seen and what it might mean for humanity's future. The hours following the alien broadcast were chaos. Outside Dr. Cooper's research facility, car alarms wailed endlessly as people abandoned their vehicles in the streets. Emergency sirens echoed across the city, their haunting sound mixing with the shouts and cries of confused citizens. Inside the facility, things weren't much better. Dr. Cooper's colleagues paced the halls, their faces pale with shock and anger. In the main conference room, Dr. Roberts, the facility director, had called an emergency meeting. The room was packed with scientists, all talking over each other. "This is an outrage." Dr. Roberts slammed his fist on the table. "How dare they judge us like this? We've made incredible progress in the last century alone." Dr. Cooper sat quietly in the corner, still scribbling in his notebook. His colleagues were too caught up in their emotional responses to notice what he'd seen in the broadcast. He looked up briefly as Dr. Wilson, a senior researcher, started listing humanity's achievements. "We've split the atom. We've mapped the human genome. We've created artificial intelligence." Dr. Wilson's voice cracked with emotion. "Who are they to call us primitive?" But Dr. Cooper wasn't listening anymore. His mind was racing through complex equations, focusing on one specific moment in the broadcast. The way the alien had dismissed human understanding of quantum mechanics, there was something odd about their phrasing. Outside the facility, military vehicles began rolling through the streets. The government was trying to maintain order as panic spread. People were clearing out grocery stores, filling their cars with gas, and some were even building makeshift bunkers, afraid that the aliens might attack despite their claim of just wanting to isolate Earth. Dr. Cooper finally stood up, walking to the front of the room. His colleagues fell silent, surprised by his calm demeanor. He picked up a marker and began writing on the whiteboard, his hand moving quickly as he copied equations from his notebook. "Look at this," he said quietly, pointing to his calculations. "During the broadcast, when they mentioned our flawed understanding of quantum mechanics, did anyone notice the specific terms they used?" The room stayed silent, confused by his focus on such a seemingly minor detail. They referred to quantum entanglement as impossible to control at a distance. Dr. Cooper continued, "But we proved that wrong 2 years ago. We just haven't built the technology to demonstrate it yet." Dr. Roberts frowned. "What are you getting at, James?" "They're more advanced than us technologically, yes," Dr. Cooper explained, drawing more diagrams. "But their theoretical understanding has gaps. Big ones. They've built incredible machines, but they're missing some fundamental concepts that we've already figured out." The room burst into confused discussion. Dr. Wilson stepped forward, his earlier anger replaced by curiosity. "Are you saying we know something they don't?" Dr. Cooper nodded, a small smile forming on his face. "They've developed technology through trial and error, building on what works. But we've taken a different path. We've focused on understanding the theoretical foundations first, and in some areas, we've gone further than they have." He turned back to the whiteboard, adding more equations. Their dismissal of our quantum mechanics understanding wasn't just an insult. It was a revelation of their own limitations. They don't think certain things are possible because they haven't figured out the underlying principles that we already understand. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Roberts stepped closer to the whiteboard, studying the equations. "What are you suggesting we do about this?" Dr. Cooper's smile widened slightly. "We show them. Not with words, not with protests, but with proof. We build something they think is impossible, using theories they don't understand. And we do it right now." For the first time since the broadcast, hope began to replace fear in the room. While the world outside descended into chaos, in this small research facility in Colorado, a plan was taking shape, a plan that would change humanity's future in ways no one, not even the aliens, could have predicted. In the days following the alien broadcast, while governments worldwide argued about how to react, Dr. Cooper's small research facility transformed into a hive of activity. The main laboratory, usually neat and organized, now looked like a mad scientist's workshop. Equations covered every whiteboard, and pieces of equipment were scattered across every surface. "Hand me that quantum sensor," Dr. Cooper called out from under a large machine he was building. Dr. Wilson passed him the device, careful not to disturb the delicate wiring surrounding it. "Are you sure this will work?" Dr. Wilson asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. They had been working 16-hour days for the past week. Dr. Cooper slid out from under the machine, his face smudged with grease, but his eyes bright with determination. "The math is solid. The aliens think quantum entanglement can't be controlled across large distances because they've only tried it one way. They never considered our approach." Around them, other scientists worked on different parts of the project. Some were programming computers, others were assembling specialized equipment, and a few were double-checking Dr. Cooper's calculations. The government had tried to shut down their project twice already, claiming it was a waste of resources during a global crisis. But Dr. Roberts had fought to keep them going, believing in Cooper's vision. "Look at this," Dr. Cooper said, walking to the main computer. He pulled up a diagram showing two quantum particles spinning in perfect synchronization. "They try to control quantum particles directly. We're doing something different. We're creating a framework that allows the particles to maintain their connection naturally." Dr. Wilson nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Like the difference between forcing two dancers to move together versus teaching them the same dance. "Exactly." Dr. Cooper's face lit up. "And that's what they missed. They're so advanced that they forgot sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and security guards rushed past the laboratory doors. Dr. Roberts burst into the room, his face pale. "Military's here," he announced. "They're shutting us down. They say all scientific resources need to be focused on defense systems in case the aliens change their minds about peaceful isolation." Dr. Cooper stayed calm, looking at the machine they'd built. It was almost ready. "How long do we have?" 10 minutes, maybe less," Dr. Roberts replied, running his hands through his gray hair. Dr. Cooper turned to his team. "Then we do it now. Everyone to your stations. Mary, start the power sequence. Tom, monitor the quantum field. Jack, get ready with the stabilizers." The team moved with practiced precision, even as shouting echoed from the hallway. Military boots thundered against the floor, getting closer. "Power at 60%, Mary called out. "Quantum field stable," Tom added. Dr. Cooper's fingers flew across the main control panel. "This is humanity's response," he muttered. "Not with weapons, not with anger, but with understanding." The machine hummed to life, its core glowing with a soft blue light. The quantum particles inside began to spin, forming patterns that the aliens had declared impossible. The laboratory door burst open. Military officers in full tactical gear rushed in, weapons ready. "Stop what you're doing. This facility is now under government control." But they were too late. Dr. Cooper pressed the final button just as the soldiers reached him. The machine pulsed once, and on a screen above them, numbers began to flow. Quantum data being transmitted faster and more stable than anything the aliens had thought possible. "It works," Dr. Cooper whispered, a smile spreading across his face, even as soldiers pulled him away from the controls. "It actually works." The military commander stared at the machine in confusion, then at the data streaming across the screen. He lowered his weapon slowly, beginning to realize that he might be witnessing something historic. Dr. Cooper looked at his team, pride shining in his eyes. "Now let's see what the Galactic Council thinks of our primitive understanding of quantum mechanics." The military commander, Colonel Parker, sat in Dr. Roberts' office, watching surveillance footage of Dr. Cooper's quantum communication device. It had been running nonstop for 48 hours, maintaining perfect quantum entanglement across unprecedented distances. Scientists from around the world were now flooding into the facility, drawn by rumors of the impossible breakthrough. "So you're telling me," Colonel Parker said slowly that this machine can send messages that even the aliens can't block. Dr. Cooper nodded, taking a sip of his coffee, his 15th that day. Their quarantine technology is based on their understanding of physics. They never considered our approach because they thought it was impossible. The colonel leaned back in his chair, his earlier hostility replaced by cautious interest. Explain it to me like I'm not a scientist. Dr. Cooper walked to the whiteboard, drawing two simple circles. Imagine you have two twins who can sense each other's thoughts. The aliens believe you need to actively control both twins to make them communicate. But we discovered you just need to create the right conditions, and the twins will maintain their connection naturally. And this helps us how? The colonel asked, though his tone suggested he was beginning to understand. Before Dr. Cooper could answer, Dr. Wilson burst into the office, his face flushed with excitement. James, we're getting a response. Everyone rushed to the main laboratory. The quantum communication device was pulsing with a new pattern, its blue light flickering rapidly. Data streamed across the monitors. But this time it wasn't their own transmission. It was coming from somewhere else. That's impossible, one of the visiting scientists whispered. The aliens said they wouldn't respond to any attempts at communication. Dr. Cooper smiled, watching the data flow. They're not responding officially. This is different. Someone out there recognized our quantum signature. Another scientist, probably just as curious as we are. The team worked frantically to decode the incoming message. Hours passed as they translated the quantum pulses into readable data. Finally, around midnight, the first translated message appeared on the main screen. Fascinating approach. Your species continues to surprise. Methods unknown to Council. Request elaboration. The laboratory erupted in cheers. It wasn't the Galactic Council responding, but rather what appeared to be an independent alien scientist, one whose curiosity had overcome the official quarantine. What do we do now? Dr. Roberts asked, looking at Dr. Cooper. We share everything, Dr. Cooper replied without hesitation. Our theories, our mathematics, our approach. We show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our way of thinking. Over the next few hours, they transmitted detailed explanations of their quantum theories. The alien scientists responded with increasing enthusiasm, sharing their own insights and asking more questions. It was the first real scientific dialogue between humans and an alien intelligence. Look at this, Dr. Wilson called out, pointing to a new message. They're saying our theoretical framework could revolutionize their entire approach to quantum physics. Apparently, they'd been stuck on certain problems for centuries because they never considered our perspective. Colonel Parker watched all this with growing amazement. So while they were judging us for our primitive technology, we were developing theories that could solve problems they'd given up on, Dr. Cooper finished. Sometimes being primitive means you're free to think in ways that more advanced civilizations have forgotten. The quantum device continued to pulse steadily, its blue light now a beacon of hope. In just a few days, humanity had gone from being quarantined as primitives to engaging in advanced scientific discourse with an alien scientist. And this was just the beginning. Dr. Cooper looked at his tired but happy team. Send another transmission, he said. Tell them we're just getting started. Word of the quantum breakthrough spread quickly through the scientific community. Within a week, Dr. Cooper's facility had become the center of a global effort. Scientists from every major nation worked together, putting aside their differences in the face of this historic opportunity. The alien scientist we've been talking to says there's growing debate in their community, Dr. Wilson announced during the morning briefing. Apparently, we're not the only ones who think the Council's judgment was hasty. Dr. Cooper stood at the front of the packed conference room, looking at faces filled with anticipation. The military had not only allowed their work to continue but had provided additional resources and protection. Colonel Parker himself had become one of their strongest supporters. Then it's time, Dr. Cooper said, his voice steady. We're ready to send our message to the Council. The room fell silent. Everyone knew this moment could change humanity's future. Dr. Roberts stepped forward, concern on his face. "Are you sure about this, James? If we anger them further." "We won't," Dr. Cooper replied, "because we're not going to argue or complain. We're going to teach." He walked to the quantum communication device, which had been upgraded and improved over the past week. Its blue glow had become a familiar sight, a symbol of hope and human ingenuity. "Mary, start recording," he said, taking a deep breath. "To the Honorable Galactic Council. 1 week ago, you judged humanity as primitive based on our level of technological advancement. Today, we don't come to dispute that judgment. Instead, we offer a lesson in theoretical physics." Dr. Cooper began transmitting the mathematical proofs and experimental data from their quantum breakthrough. But he didn't stop there. He included the history of human theoretical physics, showing how Earth's scientists had approached problems from different angles than the Council's species. "Your civilization advanced through impressive technological achievements," he continued. "Ours grew through questioning, theorizing, and understanding. While you mastered space travel, we explored the nature of space itself. While you conquered distance, we questioned what distance really means at the quantum level." The transmission included contributions from scientists worldwide, Indian mathematicians who had solved quantum paradoxes, Brazilian physicists who had proposed new models of particle behavior, Nigerian researchers who had predicted quantum effects that the aliens had never observed. "We don't ask you to change your judgment of our technological status," Dr. Cooper's message went on. "We only ask you to consider that progress can take many forms. The same quantum principles that make this transmission possible could revolutionize your own technology, just as your technology could help advance our civilization." As the message transmitted, their friendly alien scientists sent an urgent response. "Council receiving message. Many members intrigued. Continue." Dr. Cooper smiled and delivered the final part of humanity's message. "You called us primitive. Perhaps in some ways we are. But it was our primitive perspective that led us to theories your advanced civilization had missed. We offer these insights freely, not to prove our worth, but to demonstrate that every civilization, no matter its level of development, has something valuable to teach." He ended the transmission with a simple mathematical proof, elegant in its simplicity, revolutionary in its implications. It showed how humanity's theoretical framework could solve 3 of the Council's most persistent quantum physics problems. The room erupted in applause as the message completed its transmission. Dr. Cooper turned to his team, his eyes bright with pride and hope. "Now we wait," he said. "But whatever happens next, we've shown them something important. That wisdom doesn't always come from advanced technology. Sometimes it comes from simply looking at the universe in a different way." The quantum device continued its steady pulse, carrying humanity's message across the stars. While on Earth, people held their breath, waiting for the Council's response. The Galactic Council's great chamber had never been so chaotic. The massive hall, usually a place of ordered debate, had erupted into confused discussion. Hundreds of alien representatives from different species argued among themselves, their voices creating a storm of sound that echoed off the crystal walls. "Impossible," shouted one counselor, their metallic skin flashing with agitation. "These humans couldn't have discovered principles we missed." The head counselor, the same being who had delivered the judgment against Earth, stood silent at the center of the chamber. In front of them, Dr. Cooper's quantum transmission played on a hovering screen, the elegant mathematical proofs rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. "Our best quantum physicists have confirmed it," announced a different counselor, this one from a species that looked like living crystal. "The human theories are sound. They've solved problems that have stumped our scientists for generations." The head counselor raised their hand, calling for silence. The chamber gradually quieted, all eyes turning to their leader. "We face an unprecedented situation," they said, their voice carrying across the vast space. "In all our history of encountering new species, none has ever responded to quarantine like this." They didn't protest. They didn't threaten. They didn't beg. They taught. A murmur ran through the assembly. The head counselor continued. Our judgment was based on technological advancement. We never considered that a species might advance differently than we did. We never thought to measure their theoretical understanding separately from their practical achievements. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Cooper and his team continued to receive messages from scientists across the galaxy. More and more alien researchers were replicating their quantum experiments, amazed by the results. Look at this, Dr. Wilson called out, pointing to a new message. A research team from the Centauri sector says our approach to quantum entanglement just helped them achieve stable teleportation, something they've been trying to do for 50 years. Dr. Cooper smiled, but before he could respond, every screen in the facility suddenly activated. The Galactic Council was broadcasting again. The head counselor's face appeared on screens worldwide, their metallic features somehow looking less stern than before. People of Earth, they began. 1 week ago, we judged your civilization as primitive and unworthy of joining the galactic community. Today, we acknowledge that our judgment was incomplete. In streets and homes across Earth, people gathered around screens, holding their breath. Your response to our judgment has forced us to confront our own biases, the head counselor continued. We measured advancement solely through technological achievement, ignoring other forms of progress. This was an error. Dr. Cooper stood among his team, watching the broadcast with quiet satisfaction. Colonel Parker placed a hand on his shoulder, nodding in approval. Therefore, the head counselor announced, the quarantine of Earth is hereby lifted. Furthermore, we extend an invitation, not just for Earth to join the galactic community, but for your scientists to help us establish a new system of evaluating civilizations, one that considers both theoretical and practical advancement. The chamber behind the head counselor was now filled with representatives from various alien species, all standing in a show of unity. We have much to learn from each other, they continued. Your species has demonstrated that different paths of development can lead to valuable insights. This is a lesson we needed to learn. Cheers erupted in the research facility, matched by celebrations breaking out across the globe. But the head counselor wasn't finished. Dr. Cooper, they said, causing everyone in the facility to fall silent. Your response to our judgment will be recorded as a turning point in galactic history. You showed us that true wisdom includes recognizing our own limitations and being open to learning from those we had dismissed. The broadcast ended, but almost immediately, new transmissions began pouring in through the quantum communication device. Alien scientists eager to collaborate, diplomatic missions requesting coordination for first contact, and trading guilds interested in establishing relations with Earth. Dr. Cooper looked at his team, all of them tired but happy. Well, he said with a smile, I guess we have a lot of work ahead of us. Dr. Roberts laughed, shaking his head in amazement. You know what this means, right? We'll need to expand the facility, set up proper quantum communication networks, establish protocols for scientific exchange. And that's just the beginning, Colonel Parker added. The President is already talking about establishing a new department for galactic relations. They want you to lead it, Dr. Cooper. Dr. Cooper shook his head. I'm just a physicist. What we achieved here wasn't about one person. It was about humanity's unique way of looking at the universe. That's what we need to preserve as we move forward. He walked to the quantum communication device, its blue glow now a symbol of humanity's bright future. We proved something important here, he said, addressing his team. Progress isn't just about building bigger machines or traveling faster than light. Sometimes it's about asking different questions and seeing things from a new perspective. As the sun set outside, casting long shadows through the facility's windows, humanity stood on the brink of a new era. The stars that had seemed so far away just weeks ago now held the promise of friendship, knowledge, and endless possibilities. Dr. Cooper looked up at those stars, visible through the laboratory skylight. They called us primitive, he said softly, but they taught us something too. that sometimes the greatest discoveries come not from proving others wrong, but from showing them a different way to be right. Around the world, humans looked up at the same stars, no longer feeling isolated or judged, but part of something greater. They had earned their place among the stars not through force or protest, but through understanding, teaching, and the uniquely human ability to see things differently. The quantum device pulsed steadily, now one of many bridges between Earth and the galaxy, carrying humanity's ideas and theories to civilizations across the stars, while bringing back new knowledge and perspectives in return. It was the dawn of a new age, not just for humanity, but for all species who had learned that true advancement comes in many forms.